The invasion of the human world began with monsters. A portal appeared out of nowhere, and an endless stream of monsters came through it. Monsters came to Earth from another kingdom. Humanity was faced with the threat of destruction. All the streets were filled with screams and death. The monsters devoured and killed people indiscriminately. Out of nowhere, a weapon that no one had seen before appeared. The spear glowed, engulfed in an unknown energy. The spear pierced the monster's head. The spear began to glow, emitting an unfamiliar energy. The monster's head was shattered into many pieces by the explosive force of the spear. A new golden sign appeared in the sky, a new portal, different from the one the monsters had passed through. Through the portal, as if salvation itself, representatives of the world of swords and magic descended to Earth. They held spears in their hands as they rode on Pegasi, and were clad in armor, the Knights of Einhart. The monsters on the ground let out a battle cry upon seeing the Einhart Knights. All the monsters' attention turned to the Einhart Knights descending to Earth through the portal. A battle broke out between the monsters and the knights right in the sky. The monsters were struck one after another, exploding with energy from the spears. At the same time, thanks to the internal energy, the people of Muram moved to another place directly through the air, using martial arts. Representatives of the Muram martial arts world entered into battle with monsters. They passed through a portal that connected Earth and their world. At the same time, a third portal opened on Earth. Even more terrible monsters began to crawl out of it. This portal connected Earth with Gehenna, the land of demons, which even by its name suggested that this place was similar to hell. All the monsters that were on Earth bowed before those who were higher from Gehenna. Ordinary people suffered terribly from what was happening. They became victims of monsters that took away their dominion. However, not everyone was left to be just victims. A group of people called the Awakened participated in the battle and saved ordinary citizens. These people challenged the system by gaining superpowers and became known as players. Currently, players have freed a group of people from the tentacles of an octopus-like monster. The players moved through the sky with the rescued people, thanks to their superpowers, while the people from Muram fought the monsters. The Muram native began to grumble at the people, noticing their group, reminding them to stay out of the way. The players landed in a safe place so that the people they saved could leave. The rescued thanked the players, running away from the portal, as they were told. After they left, Lee Iron, our protagonist, removed the mask that covered half of his face and commented on the warrior Muram they had met. His comrades looked at him in surprise, wondering what was so surprising about his disdain for people. The long-haired boy simply sighed, thinking that Muramovitz probably had a high-ranking magic circle. Their conversation was interrupted by a scream from the street, and Iron turned around to see the monster attacking a car with civilians. Iron activated the status window with simple movements in the air. A request for emergency evacuation and a description of a three-headed werewolf monster appeared before his eyes. Without asking his comrades' opinions, Iron asked what they were waiting for, pointing his finger down, because they needed to catch this three-headed dog. Iron rushed out into the street, jumping through the window, not even thinking to wait for his comrade's answer. Iron ignored the attempt to stop him, feeling like he was in free fall. Iron caught his weapon on the roof of the building. Someone was scolding him over the communication channel, reminding him that the Vulcan Guild should deal with mid-rank monsters. Without stopping for a second, Iron noted to his comrade that the Vulcan Guild was not coping. His weapon returned to him when he was already in front of the monster. Iron shouted to his comrade that this was just real support, throwing his weapon at the monster. Iron's weapon hit the throat of one of the monster's heads. The members of the Vulcan Guild were surprised by the outside interference. Opening up inside the monster, the weapon turned into a hook, making it impossible to get rid of it. Iron used the exclusive hidden skill status control. His stats increased so that he could face the mid-rank monster. Iron held the monster in place until the woman and child in the car the monster had previously attacked was finally able to open the door. All three heads of the monster growled at Iron. By holding the monster back, Iron allowed the woman and child to escape. Iron gritted his teeth, telling his teammate that he was running out of strength and wouldn't be able to hold off the monster for much longer. Iron turned around, asking his comrade to quickly cut off the dog's head with a smile. His comrade was already approaching, lamenting that Iron never listened to his words. His comrade, who was a tank, braced himself for the blow, angrily telling Iron that he wouldn't survive with him. Iron thought about how his comrade, his best friend, always had his back. His comrade struck. He started to talk to Iron when a blow came to his back. There was genuine shock on Iron's face as he looked at his best friend. But his comrade looked at him with undisguised anger, asking Iron not to interfere with his life and just die. The physical pain from the blow pierced Iron along with a feeling of betrayal. Iron saw his friend smiling as he stood surrounded by the Vulcan Guild after he stabbed Iron in the back. Iron gathered all his remaining strength to escape, no longer paying attention to the monster. Iron came home to take the one he loved and run away together. But betrayal awaited Iron at home too, and the girl asked him for forgiveness with tears in her eyes. She asked for forgiveness for betraying him as members of the Vulcan Guild appeared behind her. Iron felt devastated that everyone he trusted had betrayed him in an instant. A long time passed. Iron fell face down in the dirt, not paying much attention to it. Iron simply fell flat into the mud. The rude man, the boss, was yelling at Iron to go faster. The man stepped on Iron's head, pushing him deeper into the mud, mockingly asking if he was really once a high-ranking player. Iron was in Mujie-Yan, a place where the corpses of monsters were buried under the responsibility of the Vulcan Guild, and it completely resembled hell. Death was common in such a place. They were simply squeezed out of everything possible, forced to work until they were blue in the face, as if they were slaves. This is the place where Iron spent the last 5 years of his life. Iron no longer paid attention to the way his boss's foot was trampling his head into the dirt. He was trying to figure out where his status window had gone. His vision was blank. He could barely focus his gaze. Iron felt his strength leaving him, his eyes slowly closing. A faint flickering, as if with interference, appeared before Iron's eyes. Iron opened his eyes, staring at the status window. The status window began to display messages stating that Iron had been chosen as the source of chaos, and if he accepted, it could destroy the world. Iron smiled like a madman. He didn't care that the choice could lead to the destruction of the world. The only thing he thought about was getting rid of the pain. Iron gave his consent, and everything around him seemed to become distorted, just like him. Iron felt everything around him changing, as if he was moving somewhere. Iron found himself in a different place, and the sounds of voices discussing his haggard state reached him. Iron looked up. 3 legendary beings who ruled the world looked at him. 3 rulers looked at the new source of chaos with interest. Iron looked at the 3 rulers, his expression unchanged, and before him stood the forgotten legends of the 3 worlds. Iron looked at everyone in turn, a menacing-looking man, an old man whose ribs were visible, and a devilishly beautiful woman who twirled a lock of hair around her finger. The first man, Manhwa, was the King of Silver, who conquered the continent with one blow. The second man, the Sword King, the ruler of the world Einhart, who tore apart the heavens with one swing of his sword. And the woman, the ruler of Gehenna, the queen of demons and the goddess of murder, who destroyed divinity. The 3 lords were imprisoned in the world of chaos, where Iron found himself. The Sword King and Manhwa were talking to each other, trying to get Iron's attention. The Demon Queen examined Iron, justifying his condition by saying that he had been dragged there too suddenly. Iron ignored them, staring at the status window that instructed him to follow the path laid out before him. Iron rose to his feet to follow the path that had appeared, wondering if he could get his revenge. Images of loved ones who betrayed him surfaced in his memories. Iron walked past the 3 lords, ignoring their comments about his rudeness. Only the question of his revenge made Iron stop. The Sword King continued speaking while looking at Iron's back. He said that it would now be possible for him to destroy the world. Iron looked ahead at the path he had been told to take, admitting that he felt calmer after the Sword King's words. The Sword King corrected him, saying that then retribution would befall his traitors not from Iron personally, but from chaos itself. Manhwa, tired of beating around the bush, chimed in and said that Iron would be deprived of his body and consciousness, and would only receive a notification that the world had been destroyed. Iron was silent, considering their words. The Demon Queen joined the discussion, asking Iron if this would truly be enough for him. Iron finally turned his head slightly towards them, asking what else he could do. As if expecting this question, the Demon Queen said that they could allow him to take revenge with his own hands. Everyone started smiling madly, and Manhwa and the Sword King added that Iron should fully experience what killing was. Iron looked at them, but his face was just as distant. Iron pointed to his body, which had lost all its strength and had become a slave, asking how he would do all this in such a state. He was stopped. The Dream King began to talk about how Iron would accept their power. Manhwa, who supported the explanation, said that Iron would be able to contain chaos itself within himself. The Demon Queen, placing her hand on her chest, promised that retribution would no longer be a problem, and Iron would be able to at least rule the world. They acted as tempters, convincing Iron to accept their help and powers. Iron looked at the path the system had offered him, thinking that it didn't matter what their true purpose was in him becoming a disciple. Thinking that he could get revenge, Iron accepted the offer, asking if he could call them teachers. The 3 lords were a little taken aback by the speed of his decision-making, but quickly gave their consent. This is how Iron became the disciple of the 3 lords. After this, Iron became absorbed in training with the overlords. In a space devoid of the concept of time and death, Iron continued to undergo brutal training. Each of the lords paid maximum attention to his training. And finally, Iron was able to contain the chaos within himself. Iron's eyes opened after completely absorbing the chaos. Iron saw a terribly familiar picture in front of him, his boss scolding him, trampling him into the dirt with his foot. The chief was about to strike again, putting his strength into the leg. Iron instinctively jumped back to the side, not allowing himself to be hit. His thoughts occupied with the fact that time had not moved even for a second while his training was going on. Iron caught the chief's leg and threw him aside. The boss, not prepared for such a turn of events, screamed in shock, falling to the ground. Iron checked for a status window as he watched the boss fall. The status window did not open for Iron. Iron looked at his hands, realizing that his body remained in the same state as before he started training. He remembered the words of the teachers who did not let him think that the 100 years spent on training were just a dream. Manhwa had told him in advance that when he returned to his world, most likely all the powers he had received from them would disappear. Iron, who had changed beyond recognition during the training, asked the reason for this. The Demon Queen answered his question by explaining that the world could not withstand such forces, especially due to the presence of chaos within Iron. Iron tried to understand what would happen after his return, but Manhwa interrupted him by asking what he was going to do, hinting that he would need to rebuild his body to withstand the force. Currently, Iron stood with his hand covering his face, his thoughts occupied with the fact that he needed to train again. The chief rose from the ground, shouting threats. Iron looked at him as if he had already forgotten about his presence. The boss wasted no time in attacking Iron with a punch. Iron caught his fist with his hand, stopping the blow. Chief Chultai Min, who had been bullying Iron for the past 5 years in this world, was surprised that he started fighting back. Iron thought about the difference in strength between their bodies, but quickly dismissed the thought of losing. Iron's face showed all his determination. Iron remembered Manhwa's advice that by controlling the lust for murder, even a villager could defeat his opponent. Manhwa revealed to Iron the simple truth that the lust for murder is about inner strength. This truth made Iron's eyes widen. At the moment, Iron's eyes were displaying this inner strength like a flame. Chief Chal became nervous, unable to look away. In front of the boss stood Iron, full of murderous intent, his eyes burning, promising that the boss would be torn to shreds. Chief Chal felt his arm, which he was about to strike with, break under Iron's pressure. Iron's desire to tear his boss apart was clear in his eyes. Iron reached out to the chief, breaking through his flesh. The boss felt like he had been pierced through and through. Chief Chal's face was distorted with horror. Chief Chal Wu fell to the ground, screaming at the sight of Iron. His chest was fine. The slaves surrounding them did not understand what was happening, looking at Iron and the boss with horror. Iron stood over the boss as if nothing had happened, his hand holding his fist still extended forward. Iron used fear, deciding that it was better than clumsily resisting with such a weak body. He looked at the unconscious boss, turning away from him as if it didn't matter. Iron knew that Chief Chal would now tremble at the mere sight of him. Iron didn't waste any time. He knew he had to finish before the people of Vulcan found out about everything. He walked confidently past the other slaves. The voice of one of the slaves, asking where he was going, reached Iron's ears as he grabbed the chain. The chain clanked as it hit the ground. Iron looked deep into the monster burial site, which was filled with toxic odors emanating from the corpses, a place that no one dares to go too close to, which is compared to hell. Iron turned to the other slaves, simply stating that he was going to be reborn in this place. Without waiting for an answer, Iron jumps down. The slaves look after him, shocked by what happened. Iron falls down, filled with determination. Iron is determined to hold out as he flies through the toxic stench. Iron lands in a corpse-like fluid of rot and blood, immersing his entire body in it. After some time, small bubbles appear on the surface in the place where he dived. Iron surfaces, his eyes glowing red, knowing he has found the perfect place to hone his blood demon technique. While training with Manhwa, Iron learned from him that there were many techniques, but the blood demon technique was the strongest. Manhwa sat opposite Iron, explaining the very simple principle of this technique, which was to steal someone else's property and make it your own. Iron was surprised when Manhwa said the main goal was blood. Blood technique is the process of absorbing life energy from blood using dark magic to accumulate internal power. Iron closed his eyes, immersed in the lake of monster blood, remembering his training. He remembered Manhwa's instructions, who had given him the task of creating Dantian within himself. Dantian was a source of power for the warriors of the Silver World, similar to a magical core. Iron sank into the blood, remembering that it was impossible to create it if you were not from the Silver World. Manhwa flashed through his memories, revealing another way to him. Manhwa said that no matter how long it takes, no matter how many lives it might take, You just have to keep going until you succeed. That's exactly what Iron did. He kept doing it until he got it right. Iron followed the method of his teachers, which had been developed over more than 3,000 years. Iron endured unimaginable pain, screaming uncontrollably, and survived thousands of deaths. It was this method that helped him create Dantian during his training with his teachers. Iron remembered the process clearly. The first step was to collect blood and energy. Having finished with this, he proceeded to the second step. From all the blood and energy he had to create Dantian, Iron began the blood demon technique. Feeling incredible pain in the process, Iron continued. The pain that made veins bulge and throats ache from screaming. A pain incomparable to anything in this world. There was another reason why they tried not to get too close to the burial site. This burial site was inhabited by mutants created from the dead energy emanating from the bodies, and this place was considered a lair of the dead. Iron, having remastered the blood demon technique, stood on all fours, trying to catch his breath as the dead surrounded him. One of the dead men rushed at him first, accustomed to the fact that everything that got inside the burial was their prey. Iron extended his hand, easily catching the dead man. Iron's body had fully recovered. He no longer looked like an exhausted slave, and he saw nothing special in the goblin zombie. The rest rushed after the first goblin zombie. Iron easily crushed the head of the dead man he caught, knowing full well that every attack they made carried poison. Iron looked up, looking at those who might have been his dinner if he had been in his old body. Iron used the blood demon technique, absorbing the blood of the slain dead. Iron finally felt alive, having regained some of the strength he had lost after training. He punched the dead man in the head, finishing him off. Iron continued to absorb the blood of his opponents, converting it into his own energy. There was another advantage to this technique. The blood and iron residue that Iron collected could be turned into a steel ball. Iron used steel balls as weapons. He threw the ball at the dead man, blowing off his head to finish him off. Iron continued to create steel balls, promising his opponents that he would absorb them without leaving a trace. The steel balls hit their targets, blowing off the heads of the undead goblins. Iron moved forward, continuing to gather blood for his energy. Despite the number of opponents, Iron did not feel any difficulty in fighting them. He crushed some heads with his bare hands. In parallel, Iron continued to create steel balls using the remains of blood and iron. Each time the number of balls increased, and each of them hit its target. Iron grew stronger by absorbing energy, considering all the undead goblins as mere prey that belonged to him. Iron killed every single one of the undead goblins. His prey fell behind him when he finished. Iron exhaled, absorbing the blood of everyone he killed. He looked at his hand, deciding that his powers weren't that bad. A large zombie monster appeared behind Iron and swung at Iron. Iron jumped back from where the zombie monster had struck, sensing its approach. Iron looked at the monster that appeared in front of him with a little interest. The zombie troll kept his eyes on Iron, growling and claiming him as his prey. Iron finally felt a little interested in the upcoming battle, initially expecting about this level of opponent. At the same time, Chief Chol sat on the ground and clasped his head in his hands, talking nonsense about how he would soon die. The man who betrayed Iron in the past, Kim Shin Hong, looked down on him, realizing that his boss was completely broken. Kim Shin Hong was approached by his subordinate, who informed his commander that he had brought all the guards who were there during the incident. Shin Hong approached the lined-up guards and ordered them to report everything that happened during the incident. One of the guards began to tell about what happened between Chief Chol and one of the slaves, who was Iron. Shin Hong ignored the guard's nervousness, demanding more details, and the guard mentioned the strange look the slave had when he looked at the boss. Shin Hong felt something was wrong. The description sounded like a desire to kill, but that required a lot of inner strength. Shin Hong asked where the slave who had done all this was, and all the guards shuddered. The guard who had spoken earlier answered very hesitantly that the slave had committed suicide, but Shin Hong asked where the body was then. The guard replied that the slave had gone to the monster burial area, and suggested that the body had decomposed from the corpse poisons. This answer angered Shin Hong. Shin Hong grabbed the slave's face, squeezing it in his hand. Shin Hong held the slave, not hiding his anger at the lie about suicide. He asked if the guard understood why he was called. While the guard was suffocating in his grip, Shin Hong continued that he didn't care that the chief was beaten. He felt like the slave's trace was destroyed on its own. Shin Hong told the guard that because of his lies, he deserved to die. The guard began to justify himself, asking for forgiveness, while the capillaries in his eyes burst from the pressure. Shin Hong squeezed the hand that was holding the guard's face, crushing his head and causing drops of blood to fall on him. The other guards stood at attention, afraid that the same fate would befall them. Shin Hong didn't even look at them when he gave them a choice between death and searching for that slave's corpse in the monster burial ground. Shin Hong turned his furious gaze towards them, ordering them to hurry. The guards ran down the tunnel, wanting to carry out the order as quickly as possible and save their lives. Shin Hong, remaining with his subordinates, said that the guards would die from the poison anyway before they found anything, and said that they should go themselves. Shin Hong continued to curse everyone in his mind. Iron had been buried for 2 weeks already. Iron continued to kill and absorb the blood of monsters, increasing his energy. Iron looked around him, noticing that during this time he had absorbed the bodies of almost all the mutants, as they were encountered less and less often. A ball of energy accumulated above Iron's hand, symbolizing that he had managed to reach the second stage of the bloody technique. Iron looked at the wall in the burial, feeling a powerful stream of poison coming from there. Iron threw the ball he had created using the second stage of his blood technique at the wall. The power of this stage, one's own blood, was in the concentration of force and explosion. When the ball reached the wall, there was an explosion, releasing concentrated force. Iron stood and watched as the debris of the wall, stones, flew in different directions from the explosion that cleared a passage for him. With the second stage reached, Iron's body's resistance to poison increased significantly. If not for this, there would have been nothing left of his body. Iron knew that even with this he wouldn't last long, but it should be enough for him to get started on the main goal. Iron remembered the transcendental beings, the level of which is so dangerous that it is better not to mess with them. Among such creatures, the most noble were the dragons, and now Iron stood in front of the skeleton of one of them. Iron remembered the past, how one day a dragon came out of the portal. The dragon appeared long after the monsters first appeared, and this serpent was full of rage. In order to kill the dragon, many players risked their lives, and somehow they managed to defeat it. The world was in chaos, but everyone was interested in the dragon's corpse, which could be used to make a lot of armor and for alchemy. Iron looked at the skeleton in front of him, knowing that even in death it was full of poison, rage, and magical power. One touch could melt it. The skeleton was kept here to be cleaned naturally using slaves, and Iron reached out to touch the skull. Iron used the blood demon technique on the dragon skeleton. Iron remembered the conversation with Mu Wan when he told him about the dragon embryo. Iron initially shared his plans to absorb the dragon with his teacher, and Mu Wan noted that it was for his own recovery. But after that, Mu Wan smiled, telling Iron that it would most likely be terribly painful. Currently, Iron continued to absorb the dragon, screaming in pain. Iron knew full well that he was already on the edge, and was only able to hold out until this point thanks to his training with the teachers. Iron felt his internal energy rapidly increasing. Despite the dragon having died long ago, Iron began to cough up blood. Iron suppressed the energy using his own blood technique, but the reservoirs were already full. Iron knew that stopping now would mean death from the energy flow, but trying to continue would mean an explosion from overcrowding. Iron had expected this, and remembered his conversation with the Demon Queen when he asked what to do if he couldn't absorb the dragon completely. The Demon Queen told him that dragons are highly revered even in Gehenna, and it would be difficult for an ordinary person to withstand their power. The Demon Queen pointed her finger at Iron, telling him that the answer was simple. Her eyes lit up and she told him to become a dragon. Iron didn't believe her words, asking if it was possible. The Demon Queen reminded him of how much he had received from them, and that the dragon was just another step for him to regain his power. Iron opened his eyes, remembering the teacher's instructions. This only meant that he needed to go through another transformation. Iron's DNA began to change when he decided for himself that nothing was impossible, because he even received chaos inside himself. Mu Wan, who had overheard their conversation at the time, appreciated the Demon Queen's advice. Mu Wan told Iron that in the Silver Kingdom, there was even a name for those who obtained the body of a dragon. Iron continued to hold his hand outstretched towards the place where the dragon's skull used to be. The skeleton in front of him crumbled, as Iron completely absorbed the powers remaining within it. Iron's pupils changed, becoming elongated like a dragon's. Energy emanated from Iron's entire body, as if enveloping him. Iron remembered that Mu Wan called it the Dragon Bone Body. At the same time, Shin Hong and his subordinates entered the burial site. They were surprised. In the place where there should have been a pile of monster bodies, there was not a single body, and they did not understand what had happened there. Shin Hong knew very well that even a guardian with the highest level was not capable of such a thing. He was nervous, trying to figure out what had happened. Another question appeared in Shin Hong's mind. He wondered if the same thing had happened to the dragon's body. Shin Hong gave an order to one of his subordinates to immediately report to the guild that all the corpses were missing. His subordinate rushed back down the tunnel while the others remained in the burial site. A black ball appeared in front of the subordinate, who rushed to pass on the message to the guild. The subordinate managed to dodge him, exclaiming in surprise, But the next moment the ball burst, releasing energy from within. The subordinate let out a scream as his body burned from the explosion of unknown energy. Shin Hong and his subordinates heard a scream from the tunnel and turned towards the sound. The force of the explosion was enormous. It reached Shin Hong and his squad. Shin Hong managed to put out his hand and catch the charred corpse of his subordinate, which flew out of the tunnel towards them. Shin Hong continued to hold the corpse, not understanding what kind of explosion it was. The only thing he knew was that a couple more explosions and nothing would be left of this area. A voice came from the tunnel, addressing Shin Hong, mocking him for still hiding behind his subordinates, even after becoming a commander. Iron pointed his finger at Shin Hong, calling him a traitor. Shin Hong looked ahead, not believing his eyes. He called Iron's name out loud. Shin Hong asked questions, asking if it was really that person in front of him, why he was still alive. A mixture of fear and anger was displayed on his face. Iron looked at his hands blankly, noticing that he was sad that he was not recognized because of such small changes. Shin Hong became even more angry as Iron said that he had become even more of a coward, despite becoming a leader by selling him out. Shin Hong clenched his fist in anger, breaking the neck of his subordinate's charred corpse while yelling at Iron to shut up. Shin Hong gave the order to his subordinates, the Black Hawks, to kill Iron immediately. The entire squad of Black Hawks rushed towards Iron. The Black Hawks were a special squad that was provided to the leader, and they were all experts, ready to become the strongest players. Iron watched them approach without much concern. Iron knew that the Black Hawks, who specialized in assassination, used stealth as their main technique, and their ability to become invisible could bring a lot of danger if the opponent is an ordinary player. Iron was very good at sensing internal energy. He noticed the approach from behind and prepared a black ball. The black ball flew at the hawk, pushing it towards the other hawks. The third stage in the blood technique was black blood, which is what Iron used against the Black Hawks. The ball of black blood shot out multiple cannonballs, hitting the hawks that were about to attack it. The cannonballs hitting their target sucked out all the internal energy of the enemy, and after they exploded, Iron continued to stand in place while the Black Hawks exploded behind him. Iron raised his hand into the air, continuing to look ahead. Black balls with a translucent shell appeared on his hand. Iron clenched his fist, crushing the balls into tiny pieces that scattered in all directions. Small particles of black balls hit the remaining targets, killing all the Black Hawks. Shin Hong covered his face with his hands from the dust raised by the explosions, trying to understand where Iron got such a skill from. Shin Hong activated his information search skill through the system window. The system window appeared in front of his face. Shin Hong felt like his head was being pierced by an electric shock as he tried to read what was written. Shin Hong clutched his head as he watched the system window change color to red. Shin Hong's head was still splitting in pain as he looked at the system window. A red system window on which, instead of the usual text, symbols incomprehensible to Shin Hong appeared. Shin Hong stared ahead, realizing that he had never encountered anything like this when using the skill. He was pulled out of his thoughts by Iron's voice when he asked if Shin Hong was dying of curiosity. Iron calmly walked up to Shin Hong while a new black ball was forming on his finger, knowing that Shin Hong wanted to know about his power. Iron moved even closer, reminding Shin Hong that he never acted until he studied his opponent. Shin Hong flinched when Iron, out of habit, called him the guild's main tank. Shin Hong was filled with anger as he looked at Iron, asking if he was really that confident in himself. Shin Hong reached for the sword strapped to his back, telling Iron that he was no longer the tank he knew. Shin Hong pointed his sword at Iron, informing him that he was now the Hwasun Guild raid leader. Shin Hong continued speaking, reproaching Iron for always thinking he was the smartest. When challenging Iron, Shin Hong said that he would see how he would do this time. Remembering old anger and grievances, Shin Hong shouted, remembering the old times, telling Iron to rush forward, forgetting about his comrades. But Iron didn't change his expression as he collected the black ball aimed at Shin Hong. He simply agreed, intending to do just that. A ball of black blood flew towards Shin Hong. Shin Hong held his sword out in front of him, using it to defend himself from the black ball flying towards him. The ball exploded, sending Shin Hong flying backwards with the shockwave. Iron was already behind him, telling him that despite him becoming the leader, Shin Hong hadn't changed at all. Iron attacked Shin Hong with a new black ball, concluding that he expected nothing less from the Hwasun Guild. Shin Hong created a shield of earth behind his back to block the sudden attack. The ball hit the shield, exploding and causing cracks to appear. Shin Hong shouted at Iron to shut up as he launched another attack. Iron dodged the horizontal slash of the sword. Iron looked at the sword that was above his face as he arched back to avoid the blow. Shin Hong was furious and shouted at Iron that this was his end. Shin Hong's sword came into contact with the black ball that Iron created. Shin Hong swung his sword, sending the black ball flying and causing it to explode in the other direction. The shockwave from the explosion caused Shin Hong to jump back and thrust his sword into the ground for stability to keep his feet. Shin Hong looked at Iron, asking where he got so much strength from. Shin Hong was furious. He was absolutely sure that Iron had lost his powers and all this was impossible. Iron did not reveal the secret, telling Shin Hong that such a cowardly traitor would get no answer. Iron's words made Shin Hong even more angry. Shin Hong charged forward, shouting, "Die!" Iron reminded him that it was useless, stretching out his hand to create the black ball again. A black ball appeared in his hand. Shin Hong used his power to create a wall. This time, walls appeared around Iron, blocking him from all sides. Shin Hong was sure that Iron had nothing else but those black balls, and that was why he kept his distance. Shin Hong decided to stop him from retreating, and the walls around Iron became a cage through which Shin Hong thrust his sword. Shin Hong used the night weapon attack, putting a lot of energy into his sword. The sword that pierced the walls that held Iron glowed with the force of the attack. A powerful explosion occurred inside the walls, covering everything in flames. Shin Hong let go of the dream's hilt, looking ahead at the dust from the explosion. He was sure that even the best ranker wouldn't survive this blow. Shin Hong's thoughts about that bastard Iron finally dying stopped as he stared ahead in shock. Iron, enveloped in energy, stood before him, whole and healthy, with the same bored face, as if there had been no powerful attack. Shin Hong was shocked by what was happening and tried to take out his second sword on his belt, but Iron stopped him from doing so. He grabbed Shin Hong's head with his hand and said that it was too late. Iron began to absorb Shin Hong's blood, increasing his energy as he groaned in pain. Iron looked at him like he was a pathetic little bug, noting that it was too easy for him. The chaos that Iron has trapped within himself thrives on the destruction of other worlds and exists outside of time and space. Worlds that chaos descends upon meet their end when they find a source there, and Iron trained for over 100 years to be able to absorb chaos. Some time ago, Iron stood in front of the system window, in which the notification to overcome the path and become a source of chaos was glowing. His teachers stood behind him, concluding that they had done everything they could to help him cope with this task, and nothing more could be done. Iron stood with his back to them, continuing to look towards the system window. Iron thought that outside of this place where he had spent more than 100 years, everything had already been decided. Iron turned around, hearing Mu Wan calling him disciple. Mu Wan, who had been his teacher for over 100 years, asked Iron's name. Iron chuckled, surprised that Mu Wan was still interested in this after so many years. Mu Wan covered his face with his hand, admitting that he had become too accustomed to the boy, despite the fact that he had previously been considered a heartless ghost. As if surprised by himself, Mu Wan looked at Iron, saying that he had become attached to him. Lee Iron introduced himself with his full name. After some time, Iron absorbed the chaos into himself, enduring terrible pain. His entire body felt like it was being electrocuted as Iron tried to do what he had trained for so long. The Demon Queen caught his limp body, glad that he had succeeded. Mu Wan and the Sword King rushed towards him, not hiding their concern. Iron felt exhausted, telling his teachers that he was feeling sleepy. Mu Wan came closer, explaining that it was the influence of chaos that the body was rejecting him. The Sword King said that chaos was eating away at Iron's spirit, and that he would now be constantly haunted by nightmares. Iron rose to his feet, determined to fight off the drowsiness, realizing that if he fell into the nightmare, then chaos would awaken again. Iron took a couple of steps forward, admitting that he had expected this. Iron turned to his teachers, asking them to kill him. The three lords looked at him in shock after hearing Iron's words. Mu Wan noticed in confusion that Iron knew everything. Iron calmly agreed, noting that he was, after all, their student. Iron pressed his hand to his chest where chaos was imprisoned, telling the teachers of their goal to imprison chaos and destroy it. Iron looked at them, asking if their goal wasn't to destroy chaos, although Iron knew the answer perfectly well. The King of Swords looked at him, asking why Iron had gotten involved with them then, despite knowing everything. Iron lowered his head, telling them that he was betrayed and left with nothing, unable to trust anyone. Iron looked at them again, honestly admitting that his teachers allowed him to feel a long-forgotten warmth. Iron said that retribution meant nothing to him anymore if he could return the care he received from his teachers. Iron looked at them, stating his final request to know their real names. The three lords, his teachers, looked at him after his request. Mu Wan was the first to introduce himself, saying that his name was Shin Yu Wool. The second was the King of Swords. He said that his name was Shigard von Damien. And the last one gave her name as the Demon Queen, introducing herself as Bergana. Iron clenched his fist, slightly bowing his head with a smile, and told them that he had no more regrets. Iron spread his arms out to the sides, saying that he would die here for his teachers. Iron kept his eyes closed, calmly awaiting his end. The King of Swords moved towards him, holding his hands behind his back. The King of Swords came close to Iron and called his name. The King of Swords placed his hand on his shoulder, telling him that Iron would not die here. Iron opened his eyes in shock, looking at his teacher, not understanding what he meant. His teacher stood right in front of him, telling him that Iron was their child and student. Muwan asked, looking at him, how could they kill him with their own hands? Iron continued to stand his ground, reminding them of their mission, which they were now abandoning. The Demon Queen approached Iron, telling him that they would all share the burden of the chaos within him and seal it together. The Demon Queen pointed at Iron, reminding him that the chaos within him was shaped by their techniques. Their strength should be able to withstand it. The Demon Queen said that it would help him return to where he belonged. But Iron was worried about his teachers. The King of Swords informed Iron that they would be sealed somewhere deep, while all three lords reached out their hands towards him. Iron felt them filling him with their power, sealing away the chaos. Iron didn't want to part with his teachers so soon, but the three lords continued to share their power, telling him to move on and never try to find them. Iron was currently contemplating how far the power could take him, as he sat in a tunnel filled with the corpses of Black Hawks. Iron knew the greatness of his power, because he once almost became a high ranker, and he used to wonder how it would affect people. Iron still held Shin Hong's face in his hand, pumping out the blood as he groaned, realizing that it was too easy. Iron looked at his former friend, knowing that he wasn't a weak ranker, and yet it was still easy. Iron thought that he could find other techniques besides the Blood Demon, and then he would be unbeatable. Even the Vulcan Guild leader or the high-ranking experts of the Silver Squad would be no match for him. Moreover, Iron understood that even people from other worlds, Einhard and Gehenna, would not be able to defeat him. Even those who stand at the top of the world will fall before his power. Iron kept thinking about how this kind of revenge had been planned for hundreds of years. But he didn't feel particularly thrilled. Shin Hong called out to him, distracting him from his thoughts. Shin Hong begged for mercy, starting to justify himself by saying that they had to betray him. Iron removed his hand from his face, asking again, and Shin Hong said that otherwise they would have died. Shin Hong continued to justify himself by saying that there was no other way to save them all. Iron got angry and asked if it was to save him. Iron reminded Shin Hong that he became a captain while Iron suffered day after day, asking if it was for him too. Iron's anger materialized into a black ball, which he was about to explode, but Shin Hong promised to tell him where the others were. Iron stopped, staring at his former friend. Shin Hong begged him to spare him, promising that he would help him take revenge. Iron was silent for a while, and then said that Shin Hong, who had already betrayed him, was again talking about betraying others. Iron grabbed Shin Hong's face again. Iron promised, looking into his eyes, that everyone would hear about his death, and asked Shin Hong to wait for the rest of them in hell until they joined him. Iron tightened his grip on his head, crushing it with one hand. After some time, one of the workers saw someone leaving the sealed area where the burial was. Iron broke the chains with his power, without paying much attention to them. The slaves and guards intuitively understood that Iron had killed the Blackhawks and Kim Shin Hong. Iron looked blankly at the slaves who trembled at the sight of him. Iron remembered his teachers with gratitude, because if it weren't for them, the same fate would have awaited him. Iron raised his hand, creating black orbs, deciding that he had to help them since they were going to die anyway. The slaves and guards rushed from the spot, running away from Iron. Everyone inside was hit by a black ball. Panicking, one man clutched his head, crying that he didn't want to die. But death did not await them. They felt the changes when the ball touched them. Realizing that he was not dead, the man was surprised. He began to examine himself like the others. They simultaneously realized that the slave mark had disappeared from their bodies. Iron paid no attention to them anymore, continuing to do his own thing. Iron blew up the cave ceiling. The former slaves saw this and looked up in fear. Iron brought them out of their shock by reminding them that they now had only two options: die under the rubble or escape. Iron used the flying debris as a ladder to climb out of the cave while the former slaves escaped through the tunnel. After some time, Iron stood on a ledge of rock, watching as dust from destruction rose from the burial site. Iron thought about how before meeting the teachers, he only thought about destruction. But after their sacrifice, he realized that this was not what was needed at all. Iron turned around, walking away from the ledge, thinking about what he needed to do with a world full of chaos. Iron walked forward, his eyes burning with anger and determination. His plans were to completely devour and take over this world. After some time, members of the Vulcan Guild tried to figure out what had happened at the burial site's rifts. Zhang In-woo, the leader of the Red Plum Raid of the Vulcan Guild, looked ahead, muttering that he didn't believe the report was true. In-woo stood over Shin Hun's headless corpse, thinking that this beggar who had been given the role of leader was nothing but trouble. In-woo turned to his subordinate to see how the slave's questioning was progressing. According to the subordinate, the slaves who were tortured to get the truth do not remember anything at all, and most likely someone erased their memory. In-woo asked about the missing slave marks, hearing in response that there were traces of someone's magic circle. Mentally noting that it had to be someone at least at the level of a master, Ying-woo asked if there were any other traces. The subordinate reported that there was no trace of the players or the master, and concluded that they were either Einhardt's mages or Gehenna demons. Ying-woo agreed that it was most likely Gehenna, almost naming the true purpose of these demons when he was interrupted by another subordinate. The subordinate who appeared in front of Ying-woo reported that the dragon's corpse had gone missing. Ying-woo only confirmed his conclusions because only the demons from Gehenna could use the remains without refining them. In-woo gave orders to contact headquarters so that they could conduct an investigation into all of Gehenna's movements over the past year. In-woo asked what that scum, Shin Hong, was doing here while looking at the corpse in front of him. The subordinate reported that Shin Hong was here to confirm the death of the slave Lee Iron, and this information attracted In-woo. Ying-woo looked at the corpse in front of him, remembering how close Iron had been to becoming a high-level player before being betrayed by this scum. In-woo asked about Iron's corpse. His subordinate said that he had gone into the abyss about a month ago. Ying-woo, with a slightly sad face, concluded that Iron should be dead then, because his body would not be able to withstand the poison. In-woo turned around, waving his hand, indicating that they were done with this. Finally, In-woo gave the order to his subordinate to find the remaining ones. At the same time, in Dongdaemun District, Seoul, Iron walked into a crowded bar. Around him, at almost every table, they were discussing what had happened at the burial site of the Vulcan Guild monsters. Each one told the rumors that they had learned by that time, especially convincingly implicating Gehenna in the incident. Everyone thought that the lull had ended since they had gotten involved with such a large guild as Vulcan. Iron hid his face under the hood of his sweatshirt, thinking that everyone was only talking about this incident. In his mind, he had already promised that they would all come to an end. All that was left was to wait, and it would not stop at just one large guild. Iron thought that he needed to find the abode of his teacher Mu Wan. This was the most effective way to become stronger. Iron walked up to the bartender's counter, thinking that this was the only way to find people. Iron ordered a cocktail that was not according to the recipe, and the bartender began to get indignant, trying to refuse him. But they were heard by manager Chan Ho-seok. Chan Ho-seok, who heard Iron's order, went to the bartender, replacing him and sending him to sort out the delivery in the storage room. Chan Ho-seok waited until his subordinate went into the storage room. Chan Ho-seok looked at Iron suspiciously, asking if he had been in the portal for 5 years to use such ancient principles. Iron ignored these suspicions, replying that it was more like 100 years than 5, which caused further surprise from Chan Ho-seok, who now thought that Iron was a demon. Iron looked up at him, saying that he wasn't a demon, but it didn't matter because they poured drinks for everyone here anyway. Chan Ho-seok, the head of the Seoul branch of the black market, leaned on the counter, asking what Iron wanted. Iron informed him that he needed a job after receiving a question from Chan Ho-seok, asking if there were any criteria for the search. Iron said that any D rank or higher would do for him. Chan Ho-seok opened the cabinet under the bar with a key, saying that he had something suitable for Iron. Chan Ho-seok took out papers from the drawer. Chan Ho-seok threw them on the counter in front of Iron, asking him to make a choice. Iron looked carefully at the papers offered to him. Iron noted out loud that this job would involve stealing people. Chan Ho-seok nodded, explaining the scheme of how they lure newcomers into the portal and then demand a ransom from the parents. Jang Ho-seok added that the victims were children of wealthy parents, and told Iron how much he would be paid for doing the job. Iron folded the papers evenly, tapping the stack on the table to even out the edges, and noted that the work sucked. Chan Ho-seok looked at him and asked again. Jang Ho-seok asked if Iron would be applying for the job, reaching for the gun that was lying under the bar. Chan Ho-seok pointed a gun at Iron, lamenting that they often had idiot idealists come to them and try to cover for them. Jang Ho-seok continued to hold Iron at gunpoint, asking him if he had thought about what would happen to those who were left without jobs and where they would put their anger. Iron looked at Chan Ho-seok without much reaction. Chan Ho-seok's finger reached for the trigger of his gun. Iron asked Chan Ho-seok not to worry because he was enjoying everything. Iron pointed over his shoulder, asking Jang Ho-seok to have his men tone down their bloodlust. Jang Ho-seok chuckled at Iron's recognition of his men's bloodlust and agreed to give him a job. Chan Ho-seok handed him a burner phone, telling Iron that he would be contacting him soon and that he should be ready. Chan Ho-seok offered Iron a drink since he had already entered the bar. Iron refused, looking at his cell phone, causing Chan Ho-seok to be surprised again. Iron looked up at him, speaking with complete seriousness and bloodlust about how if he got drunk and fell asleep, there would be no one left alive. Chan Ho-seok backed off, saying he wasn't insisting. Iron said goodbye to him and headed towards the exit. Chang Ho-seok watched Iron leave, thinking that he was full of illusions and wouldn't last long at this rate. After some time in the city of Namyangju, at the D-rank portal, next to which there was a guard, one guy from the approaching group of people happily greeted a guy named Chul Ho. Chul Ho, who was standing with his group, greeted An Min Hong by waving his hand at him and the others. Chul Ho pointed to the new arrivals, telling his group that they were like family to him and that they would be joining them today. And Min Hong's group bowed to their elders. Chul Ho asked Min Hong and his friends about their expectations for their first surgery. The guys were nervous, and Min Hong honestly said that he was a little worried. Chul Ho reassured them by saying that his comrades had been with him for about 3 years, and a D-rank portal was nothing to them. Chul Ho pointed to the side, intending to introduce the rest of the people. Chul Ho pointed at Iron and another man, calling them wanderers. Min Hong and almost his entire group were surprised to hear about the wanderers. Chul Ho reassured him by telling him that Iron and the second man were martial artists and had known each other for almost 3 years, after which Min Hong greeted them. Iron looked at them, understanding why they were worried. The wanderers were no worse than the demons from Gehenna. Iron was considered a wanderer in the black market too. But now he was interested in something completely different. He was looking at Min Hong's group. Iron noticed one member who didn't have a hint of surprise on her face when she heard about the wanderers. Iron focused his attention on her, realizing that he had finally found what he was looking for. That same evening, inside the gates of the established camp, most were sitting around a fire. Min Hong and Chul Ho looked like best friends as they drank together, Min Hong thanking the latter for the points he scored. Min Hong and his friend asked Chul Ho if they could go hunting tomorrow, saying that they left without telling their parents for the sake of glasses. Chul Ho hastened to calm them down, assuring them that he had already thought of everything, and that there was a place in this gate where the boys could hunt in peace. Chul Ho promised that tomorrow would be much cooler, and advised to just rest for now. When Min Hong and his friend went into the tent, Chul Ho and his partner waved to them, remaining by the fire. Chul Ho and his partner chuckled as they watched them go, thinking they were naive fools. Iron sat away from them by the fire, simply staring ahead. A female player, Yun Ha, approached him, not surprised at the mention of wanderers, asking if she could sit next to him. Iron simply nodded, staring back at the fire. Yun Ha sat down next to him and started a conversation, asking Iron if he was a wanderer. Yun Ha looked straight at him. She wanted to know what level he was if he was a martial artist, pointing out that he hadn't participated in the hunt today. Iron asked her if she knew that this was a rude question, but Yun Ha simply brushed it off, citing the fact that she was new and didn't know. Iron glanced at her, trying to figure out what was going on in Yun Ha's head. Yun Ha continued to pester him with questions, this time asking for his name. Iron looked into her eyes. Yun Ha instinctively felt fear in front of that gaze. Iron said his name and Yun Ha finally turned away from him, no longer feeling so confident. Yun Ha thought that the name sounded familiar to her. Her thoughts were interrupted by another girl from their group, who told Yun Ha that she could go rest because it was time to change. Yun Ha said goodbye to Iron, saying that she enjoyed their conversation, but Iron didn't respond, not even looking in her direction. Yun Ha kept looking back towards Iron as she walked towards the tent, thinking about the strange feelings she had about him. The next day, Chul Ho deftly wielded his sword against the monsters. His partner looked at his watch, loudly reminding him that the portal would be closing very soon. Chul Ho turned to Min Hong, saying that if they didn't leave now, they would have to kill the boss to open the portal again. Min Hong asked why they didn't go to the boss together, but Chul Ho told him that he was worried about the safety of his group. Min Hong sincerely wanted to help his new friend, saying that he was also a normal player and was not afraid of getting hurt. Min Hong was full of confidence and desire to help with the boss, convincing Chul Ho to go along. Chul Ho smiled, thinking that Min Hong had fallen into his trap. Chul Ho appreciated his attitude, suggesting that they first deal with the group of monsters that was approaching them. Min Hong and his group stood in the way of the monsters when he admitted that he was expecting this. Min Hong's group went on the attack against the ogres. Chul Ho passed on the secret sign to his partner. A system window appeared in the sky, notifying that the portal was closing. Min Hong defended himself with his sword against the ogre's blows. At some point, the ogre threw him back, hitting him with his shield too hard, and Min Hong dropped his sword. Min Hong looked at the ogre in front of him, realizing that they were stronger than he thought. Min Hong asked Chul Ho for help without turning around to where Chul Ho and his partners were fighting against another group of ogres. Chul-ho told him that they had enough problems too, suggesting that he try to deal with it on his own. Min Hong felt uneasy when he realized that help would not come to him. At that moment, the ogre swung at Min Hong, trying to strike. Min Hong realized that he had no choice but to use his trump card. He pulled out a package from his pocket. Tearing up the paper with the magic circle, Min Hong shouted out a fire strike spell just before the ogre's axe touched him. The ogre and everything nearby were fried by the force of the fire attack spell. Min Hong tried to catch his breath as he looked at the charred corpse of the ogre in front of him. At that moment, Cheol-ho ran up to Min Hong, asking if he was okay. Chul-ho apologized for not being able to come to their aid right away, glad that Min Ho had the strongest scroll for protection. Min Hong, still in shock, looked at his hands, saying that it was a disposable scroll that his father told him to only use in extreme cases. Cheol-ho asked if Min Hong had any more of those items, and Min Hong replied that he didn't because it was a very expensive item. Cheol-ho was satisfied with his answer and pulled out his scroll, causing Min Ho to have questions. Chul-ho ignored his questions, using a binding spell on the clueless Min Hong. The tied-up Min Hong fell to the ground, asking Cheol-ho what came over him. Min Hong looked back, seeing that his group that came with him were also tied up with the same scrolls. Chul-ho and his partners stopped hiding their nature, saying that Min Hong had bought into the whole thing. Min Hong, hoping that all this would be untrue, asked Cheol-ho to stop joking and untie them. Chul-ho slapped him, leaving a mark on Min Hong's cheek. Chul-ho asked Min Ho if he was completely brainless, because he grew up in a rich family while Min Ho was dumbfounded after the punch. Cheol-ho stopped laughing, coldly asking Min Ho if he still thought it was a joke. Chul-ho put the sword to Min Ho's face, starting to explain what would happen to him, starting with cutting off his ear. Chul-ho was interrupted by his partner's scream as Yun-ha cut him with her sword. Chul-ho looked at Yun-ha, who was moving towards him with Min Hong in surprise. Chul-ho blocked Yun-ha's sword with his sword. Chul-ho asked, not hiding his surprise, how Yun-ha had freed herself from the magical shackles. Yun-ha ignored his questions, showing her true strength. Cheol-ho was surprised to see her sword aura. Yun-ha swung for another, more powerful blow, but Chul-ho managed to jump back to avoid being hit. Chul-ho realized that the person in front of him was a martial artist who was not subject to magic, but he still wanted to know why his skill identified her as an ordinary player. Yun-ha didn't intend to explain anything to him, responding that he was far from being a D rank, but was clearly a first-class C rank. The Wanderer approached them, telling Chul-ho to step aside, because a martial artist must fight his own kind. The Wanderer judged her skill from the sword's aura, stating that they were of the same level. The Wanderer asked her if she could handle everyone as Chul-ho and his partners surrounded her. Yun-ha assessed her chances against a superior martial artist and 3 C-rank players. The Wanderer didn't let her think about it any further, telling her that since she wasn't going to attack, he would make the first move, and he rushed into the attack. Yun-ha parried his attacks with her sword, defending herself. The Wanderer felt a thrill, wondering if she would always be on the defensive. Yun-ha held the sword with both hands to withstand the onslaught of his blows. Yun-ha rushed to the attack, realizing that it was not profitable to defend forever, telling the Wanderer that he should not underestimate her. Yun-ha continued to press the Wanderer, delivering her blows, from which he dodged into defense. Yun-ha noticed one of Cheol-ho's partners rushing at her from behind with his bare hands. Yun-ha jumped out of the way of the strike, swinging her sword towards him. The thought flashed through Yun-ha's mind that this was a very difficult fight, because only one Wanderer was already a serious opponent. Chul-ho shouted at Iron to not stand around doing nothing and to catch Yun-ha since he didn't participate in the fight against the monsters, if he wanted to get the money. Iron looked at him without much enthusiasm. Iron walked closer to Yun-ha without taking his hand out of his hoodie pockets. Yun-ha tensed as Iron approached, thinking about the conversation at the campfire yesterday. Iron just looked at her without making any movements. His inner strength could be felt around him. Yun-ha felt it, felt that she was afraid to even look into his eyes, not understanding who he was. Yun-ha continued to look at Iron, holding her sword down. Yun-ha shook her head, pushing away the familiar feeling she felt from Iron. Iron looked at her without much emotion, remembering the conversation with teacher Mu-wan. During his training, Mu-wan told him that he was a master of the divine demonic cult. Iron then told him that he had only heard of a demonic cult, to which Mu-wan explained that it originated from the divine. Iron inquired about the fact that the demonic cult was the sworn enemy of all guilds and brought only destruction to the world. Mu-wan leaned towards him, pointing at himself and asking if Iron really looked at his teacher like that. Mu-wan sighed as he said that after he left, the Fighting Alliance had been spreading the propaganda they wanted. Iron looked at Mu-wan as he explained that they were just pitiful creatures. Won chuckled as he looked at his disciple and told him to deal with them when he returned. In the present, Iron was thinking that Yun-ha couldn't deceive him like others. Iron looked at her, seeing her inner energy, already understanding without a doubt who she belonged to. Yun-ha still stood there, trying to fight her fear of Iron, her body enveloped in the power of the demonic cult. Iron remembered his conversation with another slave in the Vulcan burials, who told him that a demonic cult could be found on the black market. The slave laughed bitterly, honestly telling that he himself was one of those who had gone through this. Iron's thoughts about how easy it was to find her were interrupted by the voice of the Wanderer, who asked if he was going to attack yet. Iron simply told him to shut up, surprising Chol-ho and Wanderer. Iron turned his gaze to the Wanderer, saying that his mouth stunk, and there was no need to ask again if he was not deaf. Yun-ha had already raised her sword by then, but she looked at her opponents in confusion at how Iron responded. The Wanderer turned to Chol-ho, asking what was wrong with Iron, but he didn't know, saying that he had only hired him to clean up after himself. The Wanderer came to the conclusion that he could simply kill Iron. Without waiting for an answer, the Wanderer swung his aura sword towards Iron, who didn't even move to the side. Shock showed on the Wanderer's face as his sword broke. Iron raised his hand, which had many black balls on it, looking at the Wanderer without interest. The Wanderer glanced at the broken sword, surprised that it broke so easily despite the aura. The Wanderer looked again at Iron, who was much stronger than him, guessing that he was of a transcendental level. Chol-ho's partners ignored the Wanderer's shock, deciding to attack at once. Iron prepared to release the black orbs, telling them that their deaths would no longer mean anything now that the portal was closed. The Wanderer screamed in fear, asking Iron to stop. Iron replied that it was too late, clenching his fist that held the black balls. The black balls reached their targets in the next instant, piercing through the bodies of Chol-ho's partners. The Wanderer, whose body was also pierced, thought that Iron was clearly the supreme master. In the place where the opponent stood, an explosion from the black balls thundered, raising dust around. The shockwave knocked Iron's hood off his head, but he still looked calmly at the place where his opponents had been. Chol-ho looked at Iron in shock, trying to understand what happened. Iron asked, looking at him, if he really had enough time to think only about him. Chol-ho didn't immediately understand what Iron meant, but it was too late. Yun-ha appeared behind him with a sword. Yun-ha took his head off with one blow. Chol-ho's head fell to the ground next to his body, eyes wide open. Yun-ha stood there with her bloody sword, trying to catch her breath, and Iron was now looking at her. Iron asked her if it was his turn now. Yun-ha sheathed her sword, refusing, saying that she was not stupid enough to attack knowing she would die. Yun-ha said that she was on a team with that guy just recently, pointing to Chol-ho's headless corpse. Yun-ha glanced sideways at the other corpses that Iron had disposed of alone, saying that she wouldn't even pretend that they were on the same side. Yun-ha looked back at Iron, telling him that she would help him with whatever his purpose was. There was uncertainty in Yun-ha's eyes as she asked Iron if he would spare her. Iron's words about how he might need her life made Yun-ha shudder. Yun-ha guessed that she would already be dead if that were the case. Iron chuckled, calling her insightful. The noise made them both turn around. A huge troll, the boss of this gate, was approaching them. Iron didn't even move when the troll appeared right behind him, asking Yun-ha if it was the boss. Iron was about to put his hood back on his head, telling Yun-ha that she was required to deal with the boss first and get them out. Yun-ha agreed and rushed to attack the boss, who was already swinging his club in their direction. After some time, a portal opened on the playground and people came out of it. Min-hong climbed out of the portal, not believing that they had made it outside. Min-hong and his friends cursed Chol-ho, who had caused them to go through so much. Yun-ha followed them out, expressing regret for letting him go too easily. Min-hong's group bowed to Yun-ha, thanking her for saving their lives. Min-hong couldn't hide his curiosity as he tried to find out from Yun-ha why she hid the fact that she was a martial artist and joined the rookie squad. Yun-ha pointed towards the man in the suit, saying that he would explain everything to them. The man in the suit addressed Min-hong's team, promising to tell them everything while he accompanied them home. Yun-ha turned to Iron as the car with the others drove away, asking how she could help him. Iron looked at Yun-ha, initially intending to ask something else. Iron's question about choosing between the Heavenly Sect or the Blood Sect made Yun-ha flinch. She tried to pretend that she didn't understand anything. Iron continued to ask her if she was a member of a demonic cult, saying that he would not report her to the Fighting Alliance. Yun-ha regained her cool head by asking if Iron himself wasn't a cult member. Iron chuckled as he saw Yun-ha's expression change. He guessed that they would be on equal terms if he was a member of the cult. Yun-ha continued to ask him if he was a member of a cult. Iron calmly reminded her that he was the one who asked first. At that very moment, 6 guards appeared around Iron, pointing their swords at his head. Iron ignored their appearance, telling Yun-ha that this was her last chance. Iron's strength manifested around him as he asked Yun-ha again about choosing between the heavenly sect and the blood sect. The energy around Iron grew stronger. The guards felt incredible pressure coming from Iron. Yun-ha, realizing what consequences this could lead to, quickly replied that it was a bloody sexta. The guards were surprised that their madam confessed so easily. Yun-ha asked them to put away their swords, calling Iron her patron, ignoring what they said about knowing the secret. Yun-ha turned her gaze back to Iron. Iron looked at her calmly as she told her men that there was no use threatening him, and he would kill them without batting an eye if he wanted to. The guards put away their weapons, not hiding their displeasure, and walked away from him. Yun-ha looked at Iron, asking him to answer her question since she had answered his. Yun-ha repeated the question of whether he was a cult follower.